Hey everyone, do you realize that the background's a little bit different? I know it's not that much different, but I actually did add some LED lights up there. So here and there, I'm gonna try to change up the colors to see, mix things up a little bit. But this does give a little bit of a cool dimension. Ooh, upgrading the studio. So today I wanna talk about something about consulting recruitment season. It is here, right? Well, I guess it depends on when you're watching this, but typically at least for the US, for a lot of it, it's gonna be like August through November for specifically full-time hires. I'm gonna be talking about specifically full-time hires, but honestly, this would still apply for those looking for internships because I think all of what happens is just like if you're in consulting recruitment season, depending on where you are in the world, when it is, this is what you should be watching. So the first thing is I want to talk about, it's like, okay, what if you don't even know when recruitment season is? Because that's it's like if you're new to consulting, you just found out about consulting and you just happen to be unlucky and you're like, oh, I don't actually know anyone in consulting or anyone that told me about when the consulting recruitment season is, or that there even is a season, because a lot of times people are just like, okay, you just like kind of look up everywhere, but a lot of the bigger consulting firms and some of the boutique firms too, they do have like a recruitment season where the recruiters go in and then they just have like, here's a group of people we're gonna go find and then we're going to go recruit them. So that's generally gonna be around the fall season, like right, basically when you come back to school. I don't actually know if other schools start different times whenever it comes to school specifically, but I know at least like for the US, we do focus on the fall. So as you come out of your internship or summer or whichever plans you were doing, you're going into your last year or your junior year, depending on how it is, your third year of college. These are all the tips I have for you. So right now, when this video is coming out, this is probably the most prevalent for this. It's really something that I want to talk about specifically for this year. I don't think it'll be that much different other than maybe some of the online tendencies that because of the pandemic, but who knows, maybe this is actually going to be the norm. I don't really know, to be honest. I might do a video specifically on how work will change specifically in consulting, but I am only going to be speaking from my own personal opinions. So first off, if you are a student, you will be following this schedule, most likely. It depends on the firm, depends on where you are. Maybe sometimes they do a different way because there's many different avenues a student can actually be recruited. One of them is definitely through school. Another one, it could also be through all the affiliations you may be involved in, like Girls Who Code. I think they do have some kind of affiliation for some of them, specifically technology consulting, or maybe you go to conferences specifically meant to recruit people, or that you just know through referrals, or all these other things like competitions and whatnot. So specifically the one I'm going to talk about is the one I'm familiar with, is going through your school. And I'll also talk about like if you're not going through your school, there's also alternatives that you can focus on. I personally have not gone through that way, so I can't really speak for that. I will tell you based off of what I know from other people who have done the same thing, but it's just not my personal experience, so I can only touch surface level for that. So the first off is, if you didn't know, so a lot of the big firms recruit from students specifically for the new programs. So it's generally going to be like a program you're going to be admitted into, like an entry-level program. It's not going to be like a role specifically like, oh, I'm going to be an AI data engineering technology consultant. Like you probably won't have like that much of a specific role whenever it comes to college recruiting or school recruiting, whatever. Maybe it could be grad school too. That also applies. It's probably going to be more of an entry-level program where everyone has the same title generally, or different tracks within the program. So for example, my time at Accenture, there was the CDP program, there's the TDP program, there's the security program, and I was in TDP. I actually applied for both CDP and TDP. Definitely check out my video over here because I do talk about my entire process, like from start to end, every single thing I did, prepared, what happened afterwards, why they even hired me in the first place. Like all of that was in those videos. So definitely check that out over here or in my description box. So those will walk you through my process from when I started like 4 years ago in this recruitment process. The other thing is that these recruitment processes, I'm not going to talk about how it's like in terms of what interviews expect. What can you possibly do to be able to step up or whatnot? Because every single year it changes. Every firm, every country, every city even, depending on how you even came in, like if it's through competition or an affiliation or school or non-target school, there's so many different ways. Even by role, it's different. Like if you were even coming in as like an experienced hire, completely different. Even if you were going in for the same exact role, could be completely different. So all of these are going to be general tips and what to expect, because I think these are going to be very specific to consulting, but it won't be that specific to a particular interview process or even firm or whatnot. So the first off is like, you want to look, where do these firms, or specifically in consulting, recruit? And when I'm saying where, I'm not talking about like, oh, I went to BU and I don't know, BCG does not recruit at BU. Now what do I do now? Where do I need to go for that? You could technically do that, maybe like reverse engineer and see like, okay, what are the other places they recruit from, and then maybe try to affiliate with them. But I think that like, if you have the time and the energy to do that, go for it. But for me specifically, what I'm going to talk about is like, where do you even get started? So the first thing is, if your school is a target school, how do you even know that they're a target school? You can go on their website and generally it will be there. If not, go to your school's career center. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, these career centers, they don't have anything, okay? They don't have, like, they've never helped me, they've never done anything. Well, you'll be surprised, all of these like recruiters that reach out to you specifically for this, they go to the career center. That's like usually the first place they go to be able to build that relationship with the school and recruit from them. They're also the ones that actually go through booking rooms to do information sessions. And again, this is like specifically talking about as if it is in person. I do see a lot of schools are back in person, but maybe not all the firms are comfortable doing that. So you may want to double check first to see, are there going to be in-person information sessions or networking events or conferences or any of this, like any single thing. Look it up for any of these consulting firms. Even if it's like not a brand or name or firm you're comfortable or you even know about, just go, because you never know what doors will open, what opportunities are out there that maybe just stick out to you. Maybe you wanted like a marketing consulting internship at PwC, but then you see that they're not recruiting for that this year, but they are recruiting for that at EY. If you didn't go there, you wouldn't have known that. So it's really good to just go to every single thing. It's also just as important to not burn yourself out. So be careful and make sure you ask like, oh, what are the possibilities out there? But you want to like not go to everything, go to the big important ones first, and then from there, like, oh, if the schedule allows, then go for it. So when you go to the career center, there's also a few other ways you can do it. You can go look, and there's probably some kind of newsletter your school sends out for this. So subscribe to that. Usually they always have like some kind of calendar that shows like, oh, this so-and-so event is going to be going to that room at this date and time. You can go there. Or that there's a Zoom event coming out for this. So just put that on your calendar and make sure you attend it, which is even better because then you don't actually have to be like 100% there, but you should be 100% there because you're probably going to be wanting to network. And there's also like different techniques between like, should we do it in person or online? So also there's also portals. So if your school has a portal of like all the opportunities out there, internships or jobs, you want to look at that, because that's actually how I found out about Accenture's. I knew we had a career fair with Accenture almost every year. I don't know how career fairs are working out this time around in 2021 recruitment, 2021 to 2022. Could be a little bit different. I know in the past it was virtual. I don't know if it will be virtual or in person this time. It may differ based off of where your school is and how their policy is like, or even how the firm feels comfortable with sending people out. I don't know how that works out, but definitely check that out. Look at what everything that's on their calendar, on their website, their portal, their emails. You may even want to be friends with someone in the career center, be close to someone there who can probably give you all the details. So they sometimes have like career counselors at the school. So you want to make sure to reach out to them and say like, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I want, and kind of curious about like if you know any other opportunities that the school provided. Even if your dream consulting firm is not even recruiting there, it's not impossible. I've definitely seen people who, like, for example, if Deloitte Consulting does not recruit at BU, how did they do it? They did a lot of work on top of that. But this is just like specifically the straightforward way. Talk to the career center, see what even recruits in the first place, see what are the opportunities out there, and then pursue them. I think every school has at least one consulting firm. It may not be big, could be small, that actually recruit there. So definitely try those out and then learn about them as much as you can. See how they fit in your world, and vice versa. How would you fit in their world? Does it actually match, or you're just doing it because it's the only opportunity? But still be looking outside as well to see what are the opportunities. Maybe like Boston has like a conference on it. Maybe there's like a big conference in New York that I want to fly down to. Or maybe that there's a virtual conference I see. I'll just attend that, or I'll network to the technology consulting community Facebook group. So definitely do that, because like there's so many opportunities out there. You just need to find it. So now that you're at these networking events, or you're just meeting these people for the first time, you want to make sure that you could either first do your research about the firm or the programs or whatever as much as you can, but also realize that these sessions are not just for you to like show off, you know? You also want to make sure you ask targeted questions. And this is very specific to like questions you probably would be asking in an interview, but not something as general as like, what do you like about Accenture? You know, don't ask things like that. Sometimes you could, but you need to also make sure you build a story around it, that you're not asking like what every other person has been asking. So for example, what makes Strategy Ann from PwC different than Parthenon from EY? That's a very specific question. They may or may not know the answer either, depending on who you're talking to. The recruiter may know, they may know like what to talk about specifically, like they're kind of like the marketing of the firm. But if you talk to a consultant, they may or may not know. They're focusing more on the client work. So know who your audience is. If it's a consultant, talk about the consulting work, maybe their process specifically, what they liked about it, their journey. Recruitment is probably more about like the face of Accenture, face of EY, or whatever firm you're talking to, and talk about like why do they care about the company, what do they see happening, and all these things that you normally wouldn't want to ask before. This is where you would ask. These also, if you do these targeted questions, it will actually really help out in the interview. And I've actually done a few things like that before. So when I did ask like my recruiter, like, hey, what did you really like about Accenture that stood out to you? What made them inclusive? And they mentioned the whole Women 2025 movement. I was like, wow, that is great. So now when I did my interview and I actually looked into this a little bit more, as you should always follow up. You shouldn't just be something that goes in one ear, out the other. You should process it and learn about it a little bit more. Actually see that you know about it and not just know of it. So when you do the interview, for example, they would ask me, what did you like about Accenture? I would mention that exact thing, that I learned about it at a recruiter, at the career fair. I already at that point knew about Accenture. I liked Accenture, but this kind of just honed it in like, wow, this is where I need to be, especially in technology where there's like a lack of women, specifically in STEM. So I was like, perfect, I'll just do that, you know, like, because that's exactly what I've done. I have a story that backed it up. Like when I was at Analytic Partners, I actually did start a Women Wednesdays. So that backed it up that I wasn't just spewing out bullshit. I actually had a story behind it. I did the research behind it. I even had like numbers off the top of my head. I wouldn't be that specific about numbers because then it really shows you rehearsed it kind of, but you want to make it in a very natural way. So things like that are really important. I know you usually, whenever these comes to these big events, you only have like maybe 1 or 2 minutes, sometimes even less. So you really want to make an impression and definitely make sure to get their contact information. There's so many times where people are like, yeah, I know I have to make a thank you email and whatever, but they don't actually know how to. They know like, yeah, I'll write a thank you and whatnot. How do I even get this email address in the first place? Do I start stalking on LinkedIn or on Google or whatever? No, simply just ask for their email address for more information. So that way, if they wanted to give you more information about it, you could. You could also contact them and say like, hey, remember that program you mentioned the other day? I really want to learn more about it. Do you have information about that? Because of course we only have 1 to 2 minutes. So something like that is also really cool because you have now started your first step of creating that thank you email and you're building that relationship. I think it's so important to build a relationship when it comes to consulting because it's not just like, let's hit every single consultant in the room and make a good impression. No, you want to build a relationship. Even if it's like, if I were to go to a networking event and there's hundreds of consultants, I'd probably focus on 2 or 3 and then make sure they actually know my name by the end of the session. If they just walked around like, oh wait, you were that girl I talked about this, then they probably don't even know my name, then what's the point? They probably just don't know who I am in the first place. And that if I were to reach out to them, they'd be like, wait, do I have to start all over again? Because I did talk to like hundreds of people. But you also need to be conscious of their time too. So if there are like 100 consultants and there's like 500 students, you also can't be hogging them all to yourself. You need to be considerate and say like, hey, and make an impression right there so they know who you are. Provide your information if you can, like if you have a resume or a business card, whatever you have, give that to them and say like, hey, can I connect with you on LinkedIn? That's even better because you could do it right there and say that way they know you when they connect with you on LinkedIn, that that's you. And also write on your LinkedIn request, who are you? What were you talking about? So that way they can connect a face to a name or face to a LinkedIn profile in this case. Or in this case, if you're doing it virtually, then even better, like it's really quick to just connect. The part that I want to go over here is the application. So after you've done all your research, you've made a great impression at like any of these sessions, if you have these sessions. If not, you can go out and go on their websites and probably see some of the other sessions that they have. May not be specifically for students, but you can learn about a little bit more of their firm and what they've been doing. So specifically here, that's where you want to tailor your resume, cover letter, application, even interview points, get started early. So that way, when you do that, you know exactly what research they need. So for example, if you were to ask them during one of those sessions, like what's important for you in a candidate when it comes to technology consulting, if they said they wanted to be well-rounded, some leadership experience, some volunteer experience, some technology, some business, some client-facing skills, basically get everything they just said and then put it on the paper. I do not suggest you just send every single resume out the same. I want you to tailor it to every single job posting or listing or whatnot. So depending on who you're talking to, if it's like an Accenture management consulting role, it will look different than an Accenture technology consulting role, and vice versa. An Accenture management consulting role does not look the same as an EY management consulting role. So look at that and see what does the firm value, what does the firm like, look at the listings and see what specifically things they wanted you to have experience with and show it. Like, the resume should not be showing everything, it should be highlighting things that are important to the role. So even if you think like you did X, Y, and Z, but they only care about X and Y, just show X and Y and do it well. So show it with like measurable goals, show it with achievements, and do all of that. So I've definitely made a lot of videos on that, so definitely check it out over here to get more information on that. So once you hammer that down, you send in your application. But now you also want to continue, and I know I'm going to say this constantly in this entire video, network, okay? If you don't network, you're basically just kind of leaving things out there for like, something to catch. But if you network, you can spread your spheres of influence. And my professor, Mr. Kirks at BU, actually kept on using this, like grow your spheres of influence, spread your spheres of influence. That way, when you have more people to back you up, more people to like you, more people to want to vouch for you, you'll have a higher chance than someone who has nothing and that just like probably is qualified, but just doesn't have anyone to vouch for them. It's not necessarily a referral, but it's just more people who can back you up, help you throughout the process. So maybe you wanted to get into the cloud practice at Deloitte, but you only know someone at Deloitte. So you just talk to that person and say, hey, do you know anyone in the cloud practice? And then that way you can continue to spread your spheres of influence and help your case. So it either can be like, hey, can you put in a good word for me with the recruiter? Or can you tell me like what's going on? Like I placed my application and I haven't heard about anything for the past 3 weeks. Do you mind talking to the recruiter? The recruiter's name is blah, blah, blah. I've actually done this a few times with other people who have actually done exactly what I just said to you, which is why I know it works, because I was able to push the envelope along, or I got some feedback about why. So that is really good to you. So try to basically utilize that. That's why I say it's really important to build relationships and not build connections. In my opinion, I think relationships are so important in the consulting world, and it's something that they'll always expect you to do, even with clients, like not just in the actual interview process. They're gonna want you to do it with your clients too, and eventually within the firm when you want to get more roles. So this is just basically like baby steps compared to what you really need to do. So make sure you really learn about this, because later on, even after your interview, after you got your job offer, you do want to go into cloud, but they put you into like, I don't know, data. So now you're like, wait, how do I get to cloud? You still have the connection there. You still have the relationship there. Why don't you start building off of that and see what can I do to transfer over there or even get a project there in the first place? Right there, like it's not just about interviews, it's also about building relationships and growing them. So I also did a lot of videos on specifically interviews, so definitely check them over here. So there's behaviorals, there's case, there's a lot of situational questions too. I think I'm gonna make a whole video specifically on what are the kind of questions you need to answer, either like to prepare yourself for an interview or questions they may ask you. So these are gonna be specific to consulting behavioral interviews or maybe strength-based interviews, which is actually something that I've only recently heard about, but it has been happening. I just didn't know that was the term for it. So those strength-based interviews is something that a lot of the consulting firms are starting to do. So look into those and see how you can work to that, because what they're looking for is a little bit different than what a normal behavioral interview is looking for. So if you do that, you know exactly how to basically make your case with your story. So in terms of the interview preparation, I think stories is really important. Know about like all these different qualities and all these skills that they want. Like if anything, this is what I would do. I'd have like them as an x-axis here, all your experiences, and then all your skills on the y-axis, and then check off whichever are the ones that I show it. Teamwork, leadership, problem solving, tech, business, all that kind of stuff. And then when you give the story about like, tell me at a time you struggled with a team. You're like, I would not want you to just literally go in that interview and be like, okay, I want to use that experience. Don't do that. Have them in your mind already as like, here are these like cherry picked experiences from my resume or not from my resume. It does not have to be work related. If you don't have any client facing experience, but you do have people experience, use those instead. It's technically still the same thing. It's just a matter of applying in a different lens. So try to do that and then try to craft your story that way. You probably will at least do way better than you're trying to make up a story or a random story, but at least you do have a story. So now you just have to use all of those frameworks that all these other YouTubers or other career counselors or teachers have mentioned, like the STAR method, the PAR method, or all those kind of things. Build a story. I think that's really important. Storytelling is something that is probably what people struggle the most when it comes to interviews, is like storytelling. Yeah, I know exactly what happened, but how do I literally tell people how what happened? And it's something you're gonna have to deal with all the time with consulting. So it's a good skill to keep on honing in, and that's why you have so many years of college or so many years, and you could practice it with other people, but do not practice it word for word. Practice on like what's important, because the same response I'd get for like Deloitte will be different than if I give it to McKinsey. So focus on like what they care about, what their values are, even doing research on the interviewer. That can actually really help a lot. So let's say, for example, the interviewer comes from a management consulting background, even though the role's for technology consulting. Now you know you probably don't want to go too deep in the jargon, but at the same time, you don't want to doubt them. You could say like, do you have experience in so-and-so, instead of going right into it, because it's also a big communication factor there. The interview is like very client-facing. They want to make sure that whatever you're doing right now in the interview is actually something they're comfortable with sending out to the clients. So if you do that, it will show that you're actually reflecting on what you know and then what the client should or should not know. And in the same way, they're doing it here too. So when it comes to networking, even after the interviews, you still want to network. Even during the interviews, you should still be networking for the same exact reason I mentioned before. Build the relationships, and then whenever you have a question, you can ask them, and they can also vouch for you or follow up or anything like that. Or even if there are opportunities out there that are somewhere else, but just like the one that you got is just, they just either fulfilled it already or this just not a good fit for you, but maybe your connection at like, I don't know, the agricultural industry in Deloitte has a role that actually works perfectly for you, then why don't you just reach out to them? So it's like just constantly networking. It's not something like once you get the offer, done. No more, I don't have to do anymore. And another way that if you feel a little bit weird networking out on LinkedIn or networking out with connections through connection, you could use the Technology Consulting Facebook community. Check out the link down below. Definitely fill that out. Definitely sign up and join it. There's so many resources in there, so many programs out there like the Verona Consulting Program, and there's just so much there. So it's all free for you right now. So if you go there, you can meet so many people, make a post there, connect with people. We do have events occasionally, so it'd be really good to connect with people in a very neutral environment. It's not like professional or anything where like you got to dress up or anything. It's a fun environment where you can casually meet people or even learn about like specific things like, oh, if I want to go independent or if I want to leave consulting, what can I possibly do? There's so many different things specifically about technology consulting. But if you're interested in consulting in general and you don't know if you want to do tech, also join in anyways, because who knows, maybe it's actually interesting for you. So lastly, if you get an offer, congratulations, you got it. But then if you don't get an offer, keep on going. So I think it's really important to just keep on applying, keep on going. And like, even if you do have an offer and you signed it, you could still technically, I don't know why you would want to do that if you just signed it. Keep on going and see if there's anything that's better down the line. But at least you could build connections with it, but just don't burn any bridges. So specifically when it comes to if you don't have the offer, keep going. I know like even during your interview process, you should still be applying to other places because you never know if they actually got through, you know? Like maybe, for example, you're like on the final round at Deloitte, and then you see that this boutique firm reached out to you and you were not prompt about it, but that could have been the one that actually you like more. It's better to have multiple offers in front of you and make a decision rather than just completely blocking doors from everything and just focusing on the one you have at hand or the one you like, because you never know what are the opportunities that are knocking down your door and what could open if you were to actually do it. Because what if that person actually is about to leave the firm and then says, I'm gonna go to BCG and now I want you on the team, I just was not at this boutique firm, and now you just open doors there. There's so many ways you can do it. I know like that's kind of an extreme situation, but it doesn't actually it definitely happens where they care more about you as a person rather than you for the application. For that reason, if they like you, they might want to choose you. So even if they changed offers, changed offices, changed firms. So you want to make sure you are on everyone's best interest. You answer every single email you get. You look at your emails. I can't believe how many people I know who have actually missed opportunities because they don't look at their emails. They get like 500 emails in their inbox and all they're just like focusing on is like the one Deloitte email they have in their inbox, and they look at that. But then they completely disregard like maybe Cognizant reached out for an interview, or maybe like someone went into their spam. I know like I probably would not be looking at my own spam folder, but you never know. That happens sometimes, so definitely do that, and hopefully this helped you a lot. I think there's a lot to go on. This seems like a typical preparation video for when it comes to going through a process, but I think we're specifically consulting. Here are the main points. Network, learn about the firms and the programs on all of the offerings they have, and you want to make sure you can actually answer questions like why strategy and, or why Accenture technology consulting at cloud in the agriculture industry, specific to that, and you want to build your story. This could technically be used towards like every other kind of application or recruitment process for like banking. But I'm going to speak for specifically my experience that these are very important. And if you have any other questions, leave me down below in the comments and I'll help you out. And if you don't have any other questions, make sure to join the Facebook group as well, and then also network with people there, because like I mentioned in this entire video, network, so important. And hopefully you guys all get an offer, and if you don't, keep on going, good luck, and you'll get there. And then you'll get there. Thank you so much, and see you guys next time. Bye!